Yeah, so at first it was kind of weird because we actually had our national tournament on March, I think like 6th or 7th. And so we had nationals like normal, and then the week after, Corona like hit. So basically, I came back because I was training for Olympic trials, and they were like, "Oh, you can't be in the wrestling room, and then you can't be at school." So I flew back to Washington, which is where I'm from. I go to school in Illinois, and then from there, for about a month and a half, we were just training like wherever we could in basements and garages, all of that. And then over the summer, my coach got a setup where basically we had a wrestling mat in those tents that you kind of see at weddings, like those big tents. So we had a mat under there, and so we would train. And then I had a place set up at my house, but it was very unconventional. And even the number ones and everyone was kind of in the same boat of just training out of absolutely wherever you could because gyms were shut down. Some states like Washington was really strict about what you could do and how many people could gather. So it was definitely odd and really a hard way to go into the Olympic year, but it definitely taught me a lot about just doing what you can. Yeah, so for me, it was good because I actually had neck surgery. So all of last year, I was wrestling with a severe pinched nerve on both sides of my neck. And it was just causing all sorts of problems. And so luckily, I had the time to get it fixed. And I feel so much better this year not having that go on. I would have terrible headaches. I couldn't, look even to the left like this. So I was really glad I was able to take care of my health. And then just going into this year, I'm young on the senior level, so I just turned 21, and a lot of my competitors are like 28, 29. So for me, any experience is good, and it just gives me more time to get better. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. Yeah, so I started wrestling when I was 14. No one in my family wrestled. Like I know a lot of girls get into it because of their brothers or siblings, or maybe their dad is a coach. But for me, I rode horses competitively all growing up. So I competed in barrel racing and gaming through an organization called PSHA. So I did that till I was about 15. But anyways, how I got specifically into it was basically one of my volleyball practices, one of my teammates was like, "Hey, you want to stay after school? We have like an open mat." And my mom happened to be working late that night, so I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And the first time I wrestled, or the first practice, I kind of knew right then and there that, that's what I wanted to do. So from there, it kind of took off real quick. Yeah, so for me, it success, I would say, like it took a little bit for sure, but I never had kind of that stage where I know some people have where they lose every match in their first year, and things like that. So my first year, I really had zero technique. I didn't know really what I was doing, but I just had a lot of grit and fight, and I'm a competitor, and I think that transferred over from riding horses for so long, like having to control your emotions, performing in front of big crowds, like all of that switched over pretty well, and just the body awareness and the timing, especially. But I would say in the beginning, the hardest part was just figuring out like what am I doing, like the basic fundamentals, and then I kind of learned some bad habits early on that I had to fix later on. So I would just say picking up wrestling, but I actually won my first national title, which is at Focus on That's like a year and a half ish after I started. Yeah, it's super important because it really lowers the barrier to entry for the sport. So as of now, I think 26 states have an official sanctioned girls high school tournament, like a state tournament, but not all of those states are technically sanctioned. They just have a state meet, which is a great start. But for me, I don't think I would have gotten into the sport if it was, I could only wrestle guys because my parents, they weren't around wrestling. And initially they were kind of like, why do you want to wrestle? And, or against it a little bit to where I had to threaten them with cheerleading, which I knew they would let me wrestle if I did that. So that's what I did. But really, ultimately, it just allows us to get, girls in the door a little easier because you're not trying to have to convince parents like, hey, they're going to be going against guys. They could possibly get hurt because maybe they're not as strong as some of the guys. They can compete against girls, their own age and in an all female environment, like most other sports. So that really makes it easier. And then once you get girls in the door and get them in wrestling, you never know what can happen. Like if you looked at me like on paper, you would have never thought from my town, it was like 250 people where I lived, that I would become this, wrestler later on. Like I didn't really think it was in the cards for me, but I got in the wrestling room and I had people that gave me a chance, and it just kind of took off. So I really want the same thing, and other people do too, for those other girls out there in those states that aren't quite sanctioned yet. Yeah, so for kind of the whole, for guys and girls, I would say, you can get hurt really doing anything in life. You could get hurt getting in your car to go to the store. You really never know. So for me, I always make the decision of like, I'm going to do what I love to do. And if I get hurt, I get hurt. Or if something happens, something happens. But I really think it's that way across all youth sports. But I think as far as like girls and guys specifically, like I think parents, kind of traditionally have been a lot more willing to put their guys in wrestling, compared to their little girls. And I think it stems from this idea that girls can't get the same things out of wrestling that guys can. But, if your son gets discipline and hard work and perseverance and learns all these great things through wrestling, why wouldn't you want that for your daughter as well? Because they can just as easily learn, how to work hard, how to put in the time, how to, stay extra after practice. They can learn all of those same things. So to any parents out there, I would just say that, if you're putting your kids in sports to teach them lifelong lessons, especially your sons, then give that same opportunity to your daughters. Yeah, so this is a problem, or not really a problem. It's just kind of like the way things are for myself, and then some people that I compete with or against. We're pretty muscular because of what we do, and I've just always genetically been a more muscular person. And there's always going to be people that comment on it. So even when I was younger, I had people like, "How many roids did you do today?" Or "Why don't you just go bench something?" Because I had, really been in the weight room and gotten a whole lot stronger and more muscular. But for me, I see it as like, one, this helps me do my sport better, right? So if my goal is to be the best in the world, part of the way I'm going to get there is to be the strongest and the fittest I can. So this is kind of a part of it. And I also, I really don't think it's not a negative thing at all to be muscular, because it's just like a visible product of all the hard work you put in. I spend probably close to 25, 30 hours a week training. So it's kind of nice to have visible proof that like what I do, is working. So to any girls out there that kind of go through the same thing, I would say like, one, just know it's part of it to be, successful. And also if it does happen to you, like that's just a visible representation of everything you put into the sport. Yeah, lifting's been super important for me, especially over the years, because I've been injured a lot. I've had like 8 surgeries, and about four of them have been kind of more major surgeries. So for me, getting a solid lifting program really has helped prevent injuries. And when I was younger, it kind of helped me just, get a lot better at the sport. If you're a little kid and you're a lot stronger than everybody else, you're gonna win. And then as you get older, you'll kind of have to learn how to use that more. But if you're strong and you're technical, it's so much more of an advantage if you're not strong at all. So being on a solid lifting program can really, I would say, take your career, like help it jump levels compared to if you only focused on wrestling. And you'll get a lot of wrestlers being like, "Oh, I don't lift." It's almost like a flex. And really, like, you're missing out on a great opportunity to give yourself an advantage. Yeah, I think last year, the biggest one that comes to mind was our college nationals. So like all the NCAA schools, I won that, and then our team actually won our first team title, and we had 5 champs. So that was really cool because as a kid, I got into the sport late, so I didn't win 4 high school state titles. So that was kind of like coming into college, like, oh, I want to be a multiple time national champ, and that was the goal right off the bat. So to kind of set out for that and then to accomplish it was pretty cool. And then actually my only loss last year was to the girl that I beat in the national finals. So I had lost to her earlier in a duel. I think it was like 6-4, and just a really like bad match for me, and she was better that day. And coming back, I kind of just got my head screwed on straight and stopped worrying so much about being perfect and just wrestling. And then I ended up teching her 10-0 in the finals. So that was pretty cool to kind of avenge that and to know that, like, mindset truly is everything when it comes to that. So I would say that was a highlight last year. Yeah, I want to win world Olympic medals. That's the goal. And so I have Olympic trials in April. So trying to make the team there. And then, from there, every year on out from this is trying to be on that world stage and trying to win. I mean, I think I'll always be kind of involved in it, even if I'm not like actively competing anymore. I plan, as of now, I hope to compete through 2028. I'm still really young. I would only be 28 years old at the time. Afterwards, I'll probably coach for a little bit, but I'm really into like the fitness side of things as well. So I'm probably going to own my own business, doing some sort of online coaching. And I kind of already doing some of that now. I also do freelance for American Women's Wrestling. So I would also not be opposed to writing maybe more of a professionally kind of thing about women's wrestling, but I'm pretty open to anything. I'm just so focused on my career right now. I think it's like way down the road, so I haven't thought about it too much. Yeah, so I would say definitely this was kind of related to injuries too, but when I was 18, this was probably my one of my favorite tournaments too, just because of like all the obstacles I kind of had to go through to win it. But when I was 18, I was gearing up. I just placed, I think, fourth at the Open, so I was qualified for World Team Trials. We were gearing up, training for it, and I tore my UCL in a practice. So that's your ulnar collateral ligament, like right about here. It's the one that pitchers like tear a lot and have to get, like baseball pitchers. And it was super painful. And at first they said, like you're gonna have to get surgery and be out for 9 months. And I was pretty devastated because I'd never had a major injury like that. I was just 18, and we were going to try without the surgery. So after 6 weeks I was like cleared to start wrestling again. I'd had a foot surgery during that time, and I had about 3 weeks to gear up for Fargo, which is junior national. So it's like the biggest junior tournament in the country, and it's pretty like well known. So it was a big challenge, and I wrestled exactly 0 live goes before Fargo. I hadn't even gotten stitches out in my foot till like 2 weeks prior. And it wasn't ideal training circumstances at all. And my elbow, it was my lead hand, and it was pretty much I couldn't even use it. So I couldn't really use my lead hand that much. So I had to completely switch up my style. And I had a really tough semis match with actually a girl that's now my teammate. And then I ended up winning my second Fargo title. So I would say that was a really big obstacle because not only was I dealing with an elbow. I had foot surgery and had not a great like preparation leading up to it because I really couldn't do much. And it just showed me that, one, like if you are determined to win, you can win anything you want to. But also that like you don't have to have perfect circumstances to win. I think we get in this thing where all the stars have to align, for you to win what you're trying to win. And really it just takes like a lot of grit and a lot of determination and just kind of that right attitude. Yeah, so I would say inside the gym, it would probably be my first coach, Andy. He was the one who really got me into the sport, and I'll always be super thankful for him for that. And he's still been in my corner. Some of the cards I've wrestled on, he's been there. And he's just someone I know I can always count on. And originally, when I met him, the first practice I ever went to when he was there, I was wrestling some of the guys or whatever, and he came up to me and he was like, hey, like you could be really, really good at this sport, you know. And from there on out, he kind of told me to always reach bigger, and had huge aspirations for me. And my favorite moment with him was probably my first national tournament. I got the 8 seed on a coin flip, and he was telling them, he's like, you don't want to put her on that side of the bracket with your number 1 seed girl because she's going to take her out in the quarters. And then I actually did take out that girl in the quarters in overtime to win my first title there. And so that was pretty special, just the belief he had in me. And then outside the gym, it would definitely be my dad. We used to work out together a lot when I lived at home, but we would get up at like 5 in the morning and work out. And, you know, even when I'm home all of this summer, we went on a 28-mile hike and just kind of do all these things to like push ourselves mentally. So he's someone that's always I've been able to train with, and then that's just always been super supportive, even through really difficult times.